There's only 4 words. This one's for John. This one's for Pat.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to NFL with Kyle. My name is Kyle, and I am a diehard Denver Broncos fan, and we are exactly 9 days away from Denver Broncos football. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am. I mean, I was getting my haircut today, and I was leaving work, which means I was in my maintenance uniform, pants, polo, boots, nothing on me to give away the fact that I'm a Broncos fan. And I'm sitting there getting my hair cut. The guy that was cutting my hair didn't speak any English, but he is just amazing at cutting hair. So I've been going to this guy for months. But I pretty much know when I go to get my hair cut that there's going to be no talking. So today I'm going and I'm getting my hair cut, and it's funny because without talking, there's no stimulation. I find myself nodding off almost every time I get a haircut, which is funny. Maybe there's something relaxing about it. I'm not sure, but I'm sitting there, and for most of the time I get my haircut, the guy across the chair across isn't getting a haircut. But today there was a different guy, and he brought up NFL, and immediately I'm like a dog that hears, you want to go for a ride? I kind of perk up in my chair. It wakes me up from my slowly falling asleep state, and I'm listening to what he's talking about, and they bring up Derrick Henry going to the Ravens and some other stuff, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, do I say something? Do I just insert myself into someone else's conversation? And eventually I get the courage and I just go, my sneaky team this year is the Broncos. And they look at me, and I've been doing this for years, and I say this admittedly, I always believe in the Broncos, and I believed in them last year because I thought Russell Wilson was going to be fixed by Sean Payton. I believed in them the year before because I thought Russell Wilson was going to be good. I believed in them every year going all the way back to, 2020 when we brought Melvin Gordon in and drafted KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy. It was like, man, we're loading up. We're drafting firepower to compete with the Chiefs offensively, and every single year has just been let down. And usually when I say the Broncos are going to be really good, people laugh at me and they're like, oh my God, no, absolutely not. But sitting there without any Broncos gear on, I was not laughed at. Actually, they said, yeah, Bo Nix has been looking really good in the preseason. So it is actually starting to dawn on people that maybe the Broncos are better than their 5.5 win total. The public opinion seems to believe that Bo Nix has been very impressive in the preseason, and the thinking is Sean Payton's never lost more than 7 games as a head coach. I will admit he did that 7 win total 3 years in a row, but still 5.5 is very insulting, and there's just no way this team wins 5.5. I also think that Bo Nix is going to play really well. We are 9 days away from Bo Nix taking his first snap. And I was talking to my buddy on the phone today. He's a diehard Florida State fan. I mean, he likes Florida State like I like the Broncos, which is like very rare to find somebody that shares this passion that I have. but he shares it with Florida State. And we were talking on the phone today, and he was talking about how all offseason, they were saying Florida State's going to dominate in the trenches. And they could not run the football against Georgia Tech, the game that just happened in Ireland. They couldn't run the football. They were bad in the trenches. The coaching was terrible. They were trying to keep fresh bodies in. They were rotating too much players, taking talented people out of the game. It was just a mess. And all off season, it was like Florida State's going to go in there. They're going to win the game. I mean, they were a number 9 ranked team. So it's just crazy to me on how wrong people can be. And then week 1 happens, and it's like, okay, we have something to at least, I mean, right now we're just throwing darts at the board. The Broncos are going to be bad. The Patriots are going to be bad. The Bengals are going to be good. I mean, sure, like some of the darts have a little more light to them, like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are going to be good. But for a lot of teams, especially the 3 teams starting a rookie quarterback, the Commanders, the Bears, and the Broncos, there is a bit of guessing going on here. And as much as Bronco fans believe that Denver's going to be good right away, and they're, Bo Nix is going to work and be the long-term answer at quarterback, we still don't know, when it's real and it's not preseason and the lights are on and you're in Seattle and the crowd's going crazy. I mean, I believe Bo Nix is going to be that guy, but there's just that small percent chance that I don't even want to say it, but you get what I'm saying. I mean, when football becomes real, I mean, we're going to know who this team is. You can have all of the vibes, the thinking, the predictions, but week 1 is when you actually have something to go off of. Kind of like the overcorrection now of Florida State wasn't a top 10 team. So, I mean, they can be wrong about these things. 5.5 seems to me, like I said, disrespectful, but the vibes are really good. And it's not just Sean Payton, and you've heard all the interviews this offseason, if you're a Broncos fan, of Sean Payton coming out and saying, why he's so happy, why the vibes are better. He said a big part of it is this rookie class that's come in and competed. They went younger. They got rid of Tim Patrick, which I talked about on the Only Football podcast. And they're going younger, and the vibes are really good. But it's not just Sean Payton that feels this way. We're seeing that the owner and CEO, Greg Penner, also have these vibes as well. And they might not call them vibes, but in my opinion, it's a better word. The word is expectation. When you get rid of a player like Tim Patrick, there is a bit of, are we rebuilding right now? That's what you see a lot of times when a team decides to part ways with somebody that was as talented as Tim Patrick, who was immediately picked up by the Detroit Lions. Like, what are we doing here? I mean, when you're getting rid of players to save money, that's normally what we're doing, but the Broncos aren't rebuilding. They're not. And I can tell you why they're not rebuilding, because when you're rebuilding, the expectations are not high. The expectations aren't playoffs for a team that's rebuilding. It's just not. That's a fact. Nobody's talking about high expectations in New England right now, for example. Nobody, not even the owner, not the CEO, not the head coach, not Gerard Mayo. Like, nobody has high expectations in New England, or at least is saying it publicly. But what makes Denver different is that from Sean Payton, and they asked him, what are the expectations this year? And he goes, I've never been one to make predictions. And he just kind of dodged the question. But we can kind of gather that Sean said last year that this is a playoff team. I would be disappointed if we don't make the playoffs. And I believe Denver has a better team this year. So you do the math on that. But owner and CEO Greg Penner did not shy away from letting us know that they have high expectations, which is exciting, because if you think about the word expectation, it just kind of gets thrown around. But it literally means that you expect something to happen. If I expect Patrick Mahomes to be a good quarterback this year, I have high expectations that he's going to be a good quarterback this year. It doesn't mean I want it to happen. It doesn't mean I don't want it to happen. It just means I expect it to happen. Okay. So as much as we want the Broncos to be good, and as a fan, and I'm sure a CEO, you want them to be, it has nothing to do with expectations. Having high expectations mean that you legitimately believe in the team and that they should be competing for the playoffs. So I wanted to let you know that CEGreg Penner watched the Broncos during the training camp and the preseason, and he's come away impressed. And here's an exact quote from him. "I'm encouraged by what I saw in training camp." Penner said on Thursday, "You go back to when I spoke after the season. I said, this is going to be a critical offseason, and it's obviously too early to declare it a success. But I've been really impressed with what Sean Payton and George Payton have done this offseason with the veteran players we brought in through free agency or trades, our approach to the draft, and what we did there." And of course, highlighted by their draft pick of Bo Nix at number 12 overall. Penner said from the very beginning of the offseason program, he could sense a shift in energy. There it is again. That shift in energy, the vibes, right? Everybody's noticing it. And George Payton has often shared a similar sentiment in recent weeks from the first day of OTAs, just the enthusiasm and competitiveness. I'm sure you all could hear it on the field. It was different, Penner said. That carried through to training camp, and now that passion and intensity that we saw in the preseason games, it's continuing into week 1 in Seattle. Penner said he maintains belief in what the team can do in 2024. It's a young team, but I have high expectations for what we can accomplish. Penner also said that he has seen an energized Payton, talking about Sean Payton, and believes in what the Broncos head coach is building. He and George and myself have developed a real sense of partnership and respect and communication, Penner said. He had a chance to reshape the roster, and I heard all this live, but for the people that didn't, I just want you to know what he said. He had a chance to reshape the roster the way he's really excited about it. It's great to see his approach. Listen for a second. Sean Payton got hired to come in and make the Broncos a winning franchise again and change the culture of the Denver Broncos and restore them to the restore them to the organization that they are. And it's one that is revered among the NFL. It's one of the pinnacle NFL teams in the league. I mean, when you think of Denver Broncos, you think success. This is a team that had more Super Bowl appearances than losing seasons up until recently. This team has consistently been a winning franchise, and Sean Payton was hired to bring it back to that. But he inherited a team that was not his. You got to think about this. If you get hired to go, do what I just told you he was hired to do, but you have to go to a team that has 52 players that you did not pick and a coaching staff that you did not pick. Okay. Think about the amount of work it takes to take an entire roster and flip it. I mean, Garrett Bowles, Patrick Surtain, Cortland Sutton, and Quinn Martinez, and maybe Baron Browning. This team has like nobody left. Sean Payton got rid of everybody, even the people that were unmovable, even the Justin Simmons, even the Tim Patrick. Javonte Williams is another piece that stayed. I mean, you can count on one hand the amount of Broncos that have remained. So think about that. You get hired to restore a team, but you have to get rid of everybody and hire an entire new coach. And by the way, in the process of doing that, you have to create a culture of winning. You have to, like he said, This was the worst coaching job in the history of coaching. What did he really mean? I think he meant that the culture in Denver was dysfunctional. What they were used to, what was normal for the players, the way they operated around the facility, it was not up to Sean Payton's standards. So not only do you have to recreate an entire 52-man roster with people that you actually want on the team, right? And you could tell that nobody was safe right away when he got rid of the most expensive defensive piece in Randy Gregory. He was like, I don't care how much money you make. I don't care where you were drafted. I'm getting rid of everybody I don't want. And it's up to you to make yourself desirable. So Sean Payton basically keeps on one hand the amount of players that are currently here. So not only do you bring in an entirely new team, an entirely new coaching staff, but now you have to implement your culture onto the players, which also takes time to get going. These new uniforms, which I'm wearing right now, the Patrick Surtain, the throwback uniforms, this is a new era of Denver Broncos. And why is it this year, not last year? Well, because now the culture is here. Sean Payton actually has the team that he wants this year, not the team that he inherited, the team that he handpicked himself. He has the quarterback, the most important position in all of sports. Sean Payton has the quarterback he actually wants, somebody that doesn't limit his play calling ability to half of the book. So now Sean is actually set up for success. You can actually say that the Broncos were not set up for success last year. They had the coach right, and that's pretty much it. They had a lot of work to be done, and it takes a lot of time. Even the teams that are very successful, the Detroit Lions, right? They hired Dan Campbell. They get the coach right. Guess what? They started 0-5, and they were losing games with Justin Tucker's 64-yard field goal and last-second touchdown passes. It was a process. But in the middle of that process, you were like, the Lions are going to turn this around. We're at that point right now. Okay, we're at that point right now where we can tangibly see the direction that we're headed. But it doesn't happen in year one. In the Lions in year two under Dan Campbell, still, it wasn't until week 18 when they beat the Packers to keep the Packers out of the playoffs that you went, next year's their year. And that was last year. And they were in the NFC Championship game. The Broncos may not make the playoffs this year, but I guarantee you, I think they could. The AFC is loaded, but I don't think that matters. I mean, it always matters, but hear me out. I think what's really important is by the end of week 18, everybody is going to think that the Broncos are a contender next year. Okay? That's what this year's all about. Year 2 is about being a contender in year 3. And this is exactly what you're hearing from CEGreg Penner when he says Sean believes he's energized. Sean Payton is energized and believe in what the Broncos are doing right now. And then he went on to say he's had a chance to reshape the roster the way that he is really excited about it. And it's great to see his approach. The excitement around the Broncos stems in no small part from the early play of rookie quarterback Bo Nix. Penner said that the 12th overall pick has made a strong impression in his early months with the team. I've been really impressed with his poise and maturity, Penner said of Nix. There's something about starting that many games in college that obviously develops that, and I think he has incredible traits. And you're also hearing guys like Mike McGlinchey come out, and you can read between the lines. In his press conference, he was saying it's really nice to have a quarterback. He's saying, like, basically Bo Nix is one of the guys. He's able to be himself. He doesn't let it get to his head just because he's, a star quarterback for a franchise as coveted as the Denver Broncos. It hasn't gotten to his head. He's remained the same guy throughout this whole process. And guess who, he had to deal with last year, superstar Russell Wilson with Sierra. Okay. So I feel like this team, and there was always this thing where it was like, the locker room doesn't like Russell Wilson, and the locker room came out and was like, yeah, we do. Stop saying that. Look, I think two things can be true. I think the team could have had Russell Wilson's back, and I also think that they could prefer somebody like Bo Nix over the personality of Russell Wilson. I don't think necessarily that they were like, texting each other bad things about Russ. Maybe they were. But I think just because you publicly have somebody's back, I think that's just the nature of the game. Like, he's your teammate. Of course you're going to have his back. It's called loyalty. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're super stoked about it. I think that the Broncos actually have a quarterback right now that they are super stoked about. And you're hearing it all the way down. And you're hearing that Greg Penner, he called Bo Nix, he said. And this is what he said. I had a great conversation with him then. I had a chance to call him after Sean announced that he'd be the starting quarterback. All rookies go through some ups and downs in their first season. And I told him, we're going to support you. Boom. This is the most important thing an owner can tell a rookie quarterback. There's going to be downs. Of course, he said ups, but let's just be real here. There's going to be ups and downs. We're going to support you. If you throw an interception, we are going to have your back. You're our guy. We don't need you out there playing like your job is on the line every snap. Because believe it or not, that's kind of how Russell Wilson looked. It constantly looked like he went from being a superstar to being the bottom of the NFL, and he was just trying to make one play happen that would be so remarkable that he would just get back to where he was. And every play that didn't happen, he became more desperate and more desperate and more desperate. The ownership group is saying, Bo, we just need you to be out there and be confident because you're our guy. And look, his poise and maturity, it's going to, I don't even think Penner needed to say this, but in my opinion, it's icing on the cake. I think all ownership, should call, including the head coach and the GM, should let their quarterback know that we got your back. We're going to ride with you through thick and thin. There's going to be bad moments, but we got your back. Because you can always reevaluate during the offseason, but you really should have your quarterback feeling confident before week 1. And it seems like not only is Greg Penner confident in Bo Nix, but he's confident in the Broncos entirely. And that's why he says he has high expectations for what we can accomplish. I'm telling you, the Broncos are this year's sneaky team. They are not a 5.5 win team. We got Bill in the chat. He said we're in year 3 of the new regime and we're still working on it. Well, in order for it to work, you got to have the quarterback right. Okay. You got, I made the comparison with the Lions, but you got to admit, Jared Goff is a really good quarterback. And somebody was saying earlier, Jared Goff wasn't better than Trevor Lawrence. Okay. I could only accept that argument if somebody was saying by the time, they both retire and hang the cleats up, that we'll say Trevor Lawrence was a better quarterback. Sure. Maybe. I have high expectations for Trevor Lawrence, but right now, if you're telling me right now Trevor Lawrence is better than Jared Goff, I don't see how you make that argument. I really don't. And we could get into that argument. I mean, quarterback tiers are coming out. But Bill said, if Bo Nix works for the Broncos, I'm never going to hear the end of it. Oh, because the Giants didn't draft him, because they drafted Malik Neighbors. And not only that, if J.J. McCarthy works for the Vikings. But you know what? Couple things. Like John Elway was just interviewed, and he said his biggest regret as general manager for the Broncos was not drafting Josh Allen. Hindsight is always 20/20 with these things. Now, what's interesting about Sean is that he said that there was a moment where he's watching film. He had his analytics team take away all throws that were under 10 yards because the mainstream media kept pushing the narrative that, yeah, he had a great completion percentage because all of his throws were 2 yards downfield. And Sean said, hey, analytics department, get rid of all of those. I only want to see plays that are 15 yards or greater. And he said the numbers were the same. And then he looked at George Payton and saw a remarkable throw. And he said, we can't be the only ones that are seeing this. And apparently they weren't. But at the same time, I think they might have been. Because they called the Raiders pretending that they were interested in moving back just to see if they were interested in moving up because they were worried that the Raiders were going to jump the Broncos for Bo Nix. They called the Jets, get New York on the phone. And then they were on the phone and they're like, hey, and the Jets are like, you called us, what? And Sean Noah was almost like, oh, I forgot. Do you want to move up? Because we're interested in moving back. Of trying to see if the Jets were actually going to move up for Bo Nix, and they weren't. So, I mean, how much did these other teams want Bo Nix if they weren't willing to move up? My thinking is that they must have believed that Denver wasn't going to draft Bo Nix. But Bo Nix and Sean Payton were kind of paired together this whole time. So I have no idea how that translated. I hope a year from now we get to find out. I hope a year from now, the Raiders or the Jets can say, hey, if the Broncos didn't draft Bo Nix, we were going to with the next pick. Because honestly, as a football fan, I'm just curious to know, like, how far would have Bo Nix actually went down? They say you could have got him in the second round. That's why we got, a B grade for Bo Nix, because we drafted him too high. You can never draft a franchise quarterback too high. But just curiosity, I want to know, was he drafted too high? I mean, I know he wasn't, but would he have been drafted in the first round by another team is what I want to know. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. In 9 minutes, I will be live on the Only Football podcast. So if you guys have never checked out that channel, definitely check it out. Me and Rick, he's a Bears fan, I'm a Broncos fan, and we stream twice a week, every week, and it's about to even crank up a little bit more because football season starting. So definitely check it out. I'm going to put a link in here to the Only Football podcast so you guys can, easily access it. Let me just open up YouTube really quick. YouTube, the Only Football podcast. Here it is. And we're going to be talking about a lot of cool stuff today. We're going to be talking about, of course, NFL news, like Brandon Ayuk getting his massive deal and all of that. So I have put it in the comments for you guys. Head over there and check it out. And I will see you guys in just a little bit. As always, if you guys could like this video, it helps out the algorithm. And if you enjoy it, please come back. I mean, I'm always talking Denver Broncos here, trying to grow a Broncos community. And I go live pretty frequently here. So this is your new home if you want to make it your home if you're a diehard Broncos fan. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. I will see you on the flip side later.